Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese.
Of course. It's okay, I'll take it from here. Hey, you forgot your receipt!
For the love of palmetto cheese.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports and Happy New Year. After 2 weeks off, I'm reinvigorated and happy to be back. It's our first show of 2023 and I cannot wait. You know who wasn't reinvigorated? Was TCU last night, because in the national championship game, the Georgia Bulldogs stuck it to them 65-7 in the most lopsided game of all time in any bowl. By the way, LSU had just set the record against Purdue, winning 63-7, 56-point margin. This was a 58-point margin. It's never happened before, but congratulations to the Bulldogs. What a great win for Kirby Smart and that quarterback you see right there, Stetson Bennett, getting his second straight national title, a feat that's only been accomplished by 7 other quarterbacks in football history. How about that? And the Stetson Bennett story is even better. This guy went to Georgia as a walk-on. He didn't cut it. They brought in the #1 quarterback in the country, so he transferred and went to a junior college in Mississippi. He goes there and wins a junior college national championship. So he's wide open. You know where he decides to go? Lafayette. That's right. He was going to go to the University of Louisiana, otherwise known as Louisiana Lafayette, and go play for the Raging Cajuns. But that guy right there, Kirby Smart, came in and said, you know what? Come on back to Georgia. We want you. You'll be a backup, but you'll be good. Well, guess what? He watched through JT Bennett, and that guy got hurt, so he got his chance, and now he's 28-3 and a 2-time national champion quarterback, and that is one of the greatest stories ever. And by the way, how about LSU? I just mentioned it. They throttled Purdue 63-7. Yep, I know they had some people not playing, but 63-7 is 63-7. And guess what? That got Tim Brando's prediction of 10 wins right on the nose. Congratulations to the LSU Tigers. And like Josh Heupel, the head coach of Tennessee, said, guess what? You want to have the best college football playoff you can have? Get the top 4 SEC teams and every year, and that'll be it. And how can you argue? Josh Heupel's Tennessee Volunteers blew out the Clemson Tigers in the Orange Bowl. LSU, you just saw what they did. They won the West. And how about Alabama? Alabama throttled Kansas State, who was the Big 12 champion. And also, of course, the Georgia Bulldogs. So maybe not so far off with that prediction of having the top 4. But the real story here, right here locally, is the Tulane Green Wave. You cannot mistake what they did last week. It was remarkable. I wish I had a show last Tuesday so I could revel in it the day after. But you know what? It's still just as exciting 8 days later. Tyjae Spears, the player of the year in the conference. You see him, number 22. Michael Pratt, all these great Tulane players on both sides of the ball. They had 11 all-conference players, 6 first team, 5 second team. This was no mistake. That 46-45 victory over the USC Trojans, and that guy, their Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, was no accident. Congratulations to the Wave. We're going to give them a lot of love. After Tim Brando comes on satellite, we're going to have We're going to have Steve Barrios, the 40-year announcer, is going to be on the show. You see him right there. Great player in his time, the first 1,000-yard receiver in Tulane Green Wave history. And then we're going to have Sincere Haynesworth. This is a remarkable young man. He's a first-team all-conference center, and he is a ball of enthusiasm. And I can't wait to have him and all the rest of them right here on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned.
Sundays at 6:30 p.m.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports, and what a college football season it was. Even though last night was not the most thrilling game, maybe the worst game you've ever seen. Certainly one of the biggest blowouts I've ever seen, the Super Bowl in 1985, and another one, a few years later with the Chargers getting blown out by the 49ers. Those are both bad, but this for college football was as bad as it gets. But the season was fantastic, and nobody covers it better than my next guest, Tim Brando. He has been doing this for 5 decades. That's right. Even in high school, Tim Brando was calling high school games and some college stuff as well. And then he goes on. He's had a storied career, ESPN, Fox Sports, CBS. He's been all across the board. But he is a Louisiana native. We had him on. I never have Zooms, by the way, but I had him on before the season, and we also had him on to honor Kent Lowe. But before the season, Tim Brando came on and made some great predictions. We're going to get that into a little bit, but let's bring him on right now. He's in Shreveport right now. We're going to have a satellite connection right now. And Tim Brando, welcome to the show again. How have you been, my friend?
Wonderful. And I'm going to begin with a prompt, okay?
All right.
I'm all Tulane, baby. Go Green Wave.
I love it. You got the old helmet.
Like it?
Since you just picked it up, and this is, I'm picking mine up too. This is the new one. This is the Angry Wave.
This is an old school one that I got.
I love it.
When I had my radio show that was televised on CBS cable, we used it a lot, and I was never more proud of those young guys at Tulane and the state of Louisiana to see Ty J and Pratt play the way they did. And that defense came up big a couple of times with some big plays. That was just an epic advertisement for Tulane football. Congratulations to Fritz.
Yeah, I mean,
Willie did a hell of a job.
And you know what? That was not planned, us holding the helmets up. So I love it that you did that, because we weren't even going to talk Tulane, because I have a big Tulane show, but I love it. It was a magical season. And Tim, I mean, I know we've seen a lot in college football. We've been working together for 3 decades, but this college football season was special. And despite what TCU did last night, they had one of the most magical runs I've ever seen. I mean, we did a couple of their games where they just come back, and they kept coming back. They couldn't do it last night, but talk about that game in general and the entire season as a whole.
Well, they were overwhelmed by Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia had the better talent. They had more of that talent, 2 and 3 deep, particularly up front. The size differential was huge. A really good TCU offensive line was overpowered. To me, that was the most startling thing, because they've got 5- and 6-year guys up there. But, I equate it to this, Scotty. You've been with me at regional finals. And there's a difference between the stage you're on when you're winning a regional final.
In basketball, you mean, right?
Final Four.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bigger stage.
Right.
And I think that when Sonny Dykes said at halftime, when he was being interviewed by Molly McGrath, I see some wide-eyed kids on my sideline. That was all I needed to know. They were not ready for that stage. And they had played so well against Michigan. They had pounded the rock. Their defense had been physical. They made some big plays with the defense. They had J.J. McCarthy behind the sticks a great deal early in that game with big plays by their linebackers, D. Winters and others. That didn't happen in this game. All credit to Georgia. But this narrative that because TCU got blown out, we're supposed to erase everything that they accomplished, and that a team outside of the Big Ten and the SEC can get to the championship game, that's unprecedented.
Yeah.
Oklahoma couldn't do it. Texas couldn't do it. They're brand names. TCU did it,
yeah,
and they did it in Dykes' first year. So I think the game was an aberration. It happens. It's a matchup. Things get away from you. Emotions can take over. I thought it was over midway second quarter at 17-7. As soon as they scored that easily to McConkey, I thought, okay, they're in trouble now. And then you could see a great quarterback. Max Duggan got my first place Heisman vote, by the way. He was trying to press and make too many plays, throwing into coverage. and then the score really balloons. That happens. So to me, final score is horrible. It is an embarrassment for them, but I think they'll learn from it. And I think that teams like TCU or TCU will get back. And we're going to go to the 12-team format, so it's all going to be good. This happening on the eve of us going to the 12-team format 2 years from now was a good thing. College football's in a much better place than a lot of fans and pundits think.
And a team like Tulane would have a shot, just like you have the Cinderellas in basketball, Butler getting to the finals that year against Duke.
If we had 10-12 this year, that game would have mattered.
Right, exactly.
Instead of just an epic moment for Tulane, it would have been an epic moment for all of college football.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, that means that there's 12 teams coming in 2024 as opposed to just the 14 playoff. The BCS format just with 2 teams started in 98. Obviously, 9 years ago, they switched to the 14 playoff, and it's going to go to 12, which has been needed. On Twitter, I was getting murdered by saying people like your good friend Tim Brando, I like him as an announcer, but this is an example why the 12 team is going to be worse and it's going to be horrible.
No.
And I said, no, you're crazy. That's a small sample size. It's going to be opposite the best. Right.
The opposite. Yeah.
Well, Tim, let's talk.
You're not going to get rid of these. You're not going to get rid of these elitists, Scotty.
Yeah.
Most of these clowns last night that were blowing up Twitter with anti-TCU. You know where they were from? Alabama.
Alabama.
They can't get over that they didn't get in. This just in, Alabama. You didn't win enough to get in. And, we only lost on the last play of the game on the road. Well, you could have lost a couple of more games. You got really lucky to win a couple, too. So, and I'll give Kirby Smart credit, though.
That's one of them right there.
This inside baseball thing where he's able to convince his team that nobody believes in them is right from Nick Saban's handbook.
Yeah.
He just does a mental job on these kids, and it's all about Nick is God, okay, and God cannot be challenged. So Kirby is a disciple. So he certainly can't be God. So, any playoff without Alabama in it is, the whole sport's gone to hell. This contrived, over-the-top, overzealous, condescending attitude is not only bad for the state of Alabama, it's bad for the Southeast, in my opinion.
Tim, we've done thousands of games together. I mean, not like 3,000, but we've done a couple thousand in all sports, okay? And I've been around you for 30 years doing games in many sports, like I said, mostly football, basketball, but tons of baseball early on. But you're not right a whole lot. You're right, but you were dead on right in the preseason. I got to give you credit. That's why one of the reasons I want to have you on right after the season ended, because you made 2 predictions. And you didn't make a bet 10 and you hope 2 come through. You made 2 predictions, and they were both dead right. And I was not sure. I kind of agreed with them, but I was like, man, you're going overboard on a couple of them. Let's start here. Let's start with A&M, all right? The second one has to do with LSU, but the first one's Texas A&M. They were ranked 6th in the preseason, and you were going down the top, 6, 7, 8 teams. You go, this team right here, this team is way overrated and might be the most overrated football team in the history of college football. And my goodness, you were 100% right, because no team has started that high up and finished so poorly. So, Jimbo Fisher, how'd you get this right, Nostradamus?
Well, think about this. They stormed the field after they beat LSU.
Right.
So bad was A&M this year.
That was their Super Bowl. They did win that one.
Yeah, that was their Super Bowl. And it was one of those moments of slippages for a young team and with a first-year coach. I thought LSU was going to be a team that beat teams that no one expected them to beat, but they could slip against teams that most people thought they would. And that was a perfect example. That A&M season was already lost. Okay, season was over. They were going to have a losing record. And LSU, couldn't beat them. But Alabama, they could beat. So, listen, this notion that winning the recruiting battle only in the summertime and being on the front cover of all the rags because of your name, image, and likeness deals that you've got, the fans are getting way too caught up in this stuff. Okay, the transfer portal is as vital as recruiting, and if you don't do both, unless of course you're at Georgia where they have none, Kirby's got such a stockpile. With JT Daniels left, he didn't have any transfers on that team last night, but if you do a good job of massaging the portal to go along, Scotty, with a great recruiting year, you can have a much better season. And that's what happened to A&M. They didn't have a quarterback. How can you be ranked in the top 5 or 6 preseason when you don't even know who your quarterback is.
They were taking LSU's backup quarterback, the guy that they got rid of. Exactly.
Which he should have started the first game. They might have won a few more games.
Hey, let me say this. The next prediction's going to be more warm to the hearts down here. LSU came off the 19 championship as one of the greatest teams of all time, if not the greatest at the time. Then they had 2 mediocre seasons by all accounts. Ed Orgeron's last 2 years were not successful. They weren't bottom dropper outers, but they were both basically 500. So coming off that, I had Tim on in the preseason, late August, and said, what do you think about LSU? And you came on after 2 mediocre seasons, said, I guarantee 10 wins in Brian Kelly's first year. And guess what? They got 10 wins. The over and under was like 6.5 or 7. And they got to 10, and that, to me, was the greatest prediction because I don't think anybody down here thought that they could do that. And let me tell you this, Tim, that LSU lost that first one in a close when they were 0-1. They won 4 or 5 in a row, and then they got blown out by Tennessee, and everybody wrote them off. And I'm thinking Tim's got to go undefeated the rest of the way. Well, then they beat an undefeated Ole Miss team who's ranked 6th. Then they take out Alabama in one of the most thrilling games I've ever seen, and then they end up getting 10 wins. Tim, tell us how you did it.
Well, I think that, first off, the schedule was really good. Any year when they're playing Ole Miss and Alabama at home, okay, I take that in consideration. I always take schedule in consideration when I'm looking at preseason polling, okay? And if you look back at my preseason picks, I had Ohio State winning it all, and they were, 1 hook field goal away from probably winning it all, okay, this year. But the reality is, look, it's just a prediction. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just telling you what I think. I thought the SEC West was not as strong. And Ole Miss, even though they got out of the gates quickly and they did have a great running game, they should have finished better than they did. But I think Lane got sidetracked with the Auburn thing with his agent Sexton. But Alabama was not as strong, and I knew they weren't as strong. This was the perfect time to be playing Alabama at home. And Ole Miss at home. So for me, Scotty, that's really was the key to the selection. And Brian Kelly is the most accomplished head coach in the history of LSU football to have ever been hired. Period. Exclamation point.
That's a good take, and I wanted to bring you on to say that real quick. One last thing: college football, is it in good shape?
Yes. Despite what happened last night, it's in good shape. We need the conference commissioners now. And the presidents, Mark Keegan, the one at Mississippi State, is pushing the 12-team format ahead to 24. I think they're going to go up to Capitol Hill. They're going to try to get, some bipartisan action done to nationalize and stabilize NIL. Because if they don't do that quickly, it is going to fly out of control, and it will devastate college football. We've got individual state laws that are governing now, and too many schools have too great an advantage. And it can get out of hand, and that's got to be addressed. College football is a national sport. It needs national legislation.
Well, I love being your content coordinator each and every weekend. We've been doing this for a long, long time. So, Tim, I thank you for coming back on the show. I appreciate you so much, my friend.
Happy to be on, and again, congratulations to Tulane.
Give me a Big Daddy B. Give me a Big Daddy B.
Oh, yeah.
That's Big Daddy B is what his grandkids call him.
Must be smiling.
His grandkids call him that. He's the best granddad out there. So congratulations on that as well, Tim. That's Tim Brando. He's been doing it for a long time and doing it very well. He's in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, and deservedly so. Hey, coming up next, this is going to be a Tulane show because they deserve it. That's right. I have Steve Barrios, the 40-year broadcaster and also the first receiver in Tulane history to get 1,000 yards back in the day. I haven't had him on the show ever, and I can't wait for that. And we're going to have a real treat after that. Sincere Haynesworth, first team all-conference center, and you're talking about one of the most gregarious guys I've ever met. That is going to be a surefire great interview. He's going to talk all about the USC win and obviously the championship they got in conference as well. It's going to be a great show. Stay tuned right here on Primetime Sports.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my, oh my. Come on baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lane's the home of rock and roll.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports, and this is a guest I've been wanting to have for a long time, and I can't wait. We were going to have him right after Christmas, but we had a little hiatus, so welcome back. But how about the Tulane Green Wave? We've got a guy that's New Orleans legend here, high school, college, and he's been working with the Tulane Green Wave for the last 40 years. His name is Steve Barrios. He was West Jeff High School back in 1968. He graduated, came to Tulane. Freshmen can't play, but from 69, 70, and 71, he was a wide receiver for the Wave and the first one to ever be in the 1,000-yard club. And now he's here with us. We're going to talk about his career, plus the Tulane unbelievable season the Green Wave has had, going 12-2, the biggest turnaround in college football this season, from 2-12 to 12-2, and the biggest in history as well. Here he is right now, the legend himself. What's up, Steve? How you doing, buddy?
Very good, very good. So nice to be here, Scott.
It's so good to see you, man.
Thank you, thank you.
I remember meeting you when I first moved back in town. I was covering the Wave, for a couple radio stations back then, and you were always so kind to me.
Well, I appreciate that. It's always nice to catch up with old friends, because we hadn't seen each other in quite a while.
It's been a minute. But let me do there. Let's start with you yourself. You grew up in New Orleans, and this show is all about that. We don't just celebrate people from the city of New Orleans, the state of Louisiana, but I love when we get the New Orleans folks. And you did it every level. You were even drafted by the Saints after you played for Tulane. But let's talk about you growing up here in New Orleans.
Well, I grew up on the West Bank. I grew up in Old McDonoughville.
Yeah.
And went to McDonough 26, and then we split time. We moved to Marrero. And I actually went through Marrero Junior High up till the 9th grade, and then moved back to McDonoughville and went to West Jefferson, and of course went to Tulane.
Well, the West Jeff, was it the Buccaneers back then?
Yes, it was.
It's always been the Buccaneers. So,
right.
I mean, you're a West Bank guy. You're still on the West Bank. I love it. You're New Orleans through and through. What are some of your early memories like, growing up in New Orleans away from football?
Oh, I just like the closeness of the West Bank. Had made some really great friends. Going to the football games, we played on Friday nights. One of my best friends lived next door. He went to Holy Cross. They always played on Sunday, so I got to see them play a lot. Made some good friends from Holy Cross growing up
nice.
too. So I just wasn't limited to the West Bank.
Was there any kind of decision being made when you went to Tulane? I mean, it's a local team. Obviously, what were your thoughts going in?
Well, I was. Not drafted, but I was recruited by Tulane and Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Those were really the two big schools that came after me.
Right.
Of course, Northeastern, Southwestern, Southeastern,
sure.
et cetera. So it really came down between Tulane and Mississippi State, and I chose to go to Tulane. I didn't find Starkville very attractive.
No, it's gotten a little better.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember I went a lot in the '80s, and it still wasn't very good. Yeah. So I can imagine in the '60s it was very, very little.
And it really turned out to be a great decision because actually 2 weeks before I went to Tulane, my dad had a massive heart attack and died. He was only 45 years old.
We have that in common.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it was a good thing that I was home. I had my mom and two sisters, so it was easy on them to watch me play, and it was just a great decision.
I did not know that about you because my dad had a heart attack right before I went to college as well. Hey, talking about the Wave, I mean, they had just left the SEC a few years before that. A lot of the youngsters might not remember that, but they were in the Southeastern Conference for a long time, even played some Sugar Bowls in the 30s. But when you went there, y'all were part of the first bowl team in 1970 that they'd had since like 1939. I mean, they went to the Sugar Bowl last in 39, and then in 70 you go to the Liberty Bowl. There wasn't the proliferation of bowls now. There weren't 42 bowls, but here's right there. And Tulane was going against Colorado, who was a 14-point favorite in that game. and then they won 17-3. And tell me your memories of that day, because that's a big event. You hadn't been to a bowl that school had in 31 years. You beat a team that's highly rated and highly ranked, and obviously a much bigger favorite.
Yeah, it was quite a not a shock, but Colorado, they were very big. They were averaging almost, I think, 500 yards a game.
Wow.
Their wide receiver was Hall of Famer Cliff Branch.
Oh my goodness. Cliff Branch was on that team?
He was on that team.
That's a legendary team then.
Herb Alvis was one of their defensive ends.
Yeah.
Mike Starnes, played for them. But we came out and really had a great day running the football. David Abercrombie just had a great day. Bob Marshall at fullback leading the way, and I think we only threw maybe 3 or 4 passes in the whole game.
Well, that's what's remarkable about your record. I've been introducing you to get 1,000 yards in an era they weren't passing the ball back then. You just heard 3 or 4 times in a game. Just picture what like Navy does. They might throw one at the end just to surprise people because they've been running all game. But playing a wide receiver in that era, what was that like though? Because were you blocking a lot?
Well, yeah, I always joke that, back then when it was 3rd and short, we ran the ball. When it was 3rd and long, we ran the ball. We did have a great, my sophomore year, Rusty Lachase was our quarterback. And Rusty, he became the first quarterback to throw for over 1,000 yards at Tulane.
Wow.
And then Mike Walker came in and he finished out my career at quarterback.
And Pratt might do that in 3 games now, right?
3 games, 1 season.
Right, exactly.
Receivers now, they can go 1,000 yards in a year. I was able to, I set 2 records at Tulane, yards per catch in a season at 25.
That's amazing.
And then yards per catch in a career was right around 20 yards.
That's pretty incredible, man. I mean, you obviously have to have some speed and run routes well. What would you consider your specialty as a wide receiver? What'd you do best?
I think concentrate, catching the football.
Yeah.
Not afraid to go over the middle, and running good routes. I kind of looked up to Danny Abramowitz.
That was you had him on the tip of my tongue. I swear, because I was gonna just say this. You were drafted in the 14th round by the New Orleans Saints. A guy named Danny Abramowitz, number 46, who I grew up loving as well. He was a 17th round pick. So when you got picked for the Saints in the 14th, you said, hey, man, I might have a shot here. Go with one of the guys I grew up loving, Danny Abramowitz.
Yeah, it was a nice experience to go, to go with the Saints, to be drafted by the Saints. I think that year we trained in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and J.D. Roberts was the head coach. I got released.
Yeah.
Came home, and the next year I had a tryout in the Canadian Football League.
Right.
With the Toronto Argonauts.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Totally different scenario up there. They only kept 15 Americans.
Right.
So and then in '74 was the first year of the original World Football League.
You see, that was big. Okay, the youngsters will not remember this, but that was big. You mentioned Paul Warfield. He was one of the great ones from the Miami Dolphins. Ended up going to the World Football League. Larry Zonka, a lot of great players from the NFL went to we call it the WFL, right? And I guess for people younger than me, that might be the USFL, and then people younger than that might be the XFL. These were leagues that were really viable, and they were paying. The difference between the XFL and the WFL, they were paying big-time NFL players to go play there. So you got to play with the Birmingham Americans and the Jacksonville Express, correct?
Correct. And at that time, as you said, the WFL was getting players to jump from the NFL to the WFL to give them credibility. You mentioned Larry Zonka. Well, they went to the Memphis South, man. It was Larry Zonka, Paul Warfield, and Jim Kick. All 3 of them went there. We had Charlie Haraway was one of the big names that was with us, and also Dennis Homan. Okay, head count.
So were you Express then Americans or Americans then Express?
Americans and Express. 74 was the American, 75 was the Jacksonville
I wasn't paying
Express.
attention, but did we put the shot up of him with the? I just like the look, the American Express with the football card look, not the one. Yeah, that one. There we go. See, explain this one right here, because that is a really nice look for you right there.
That is a picture I hope would go away, but that was the Birmingham Americans. All right, and you do all these these shots, these poses, and
yeah, I'm not sure you're doing the stiff arm, or you're just saying, "Hey, ladies, what's happening? What's going on?" And there we go. You got a little bit of a all party in the back and business in the front working there, and then you got the stash. You're looking good, man. All right.
So, the Birmingham Americans, I was on a taxi squad most of that year.
Yeah.
And actually met the guy that would later get me in the radio, Larry Matson. Did the radio for the Birmingham Americans.
Larry Matson, kind of a legend here in the media here. He's been around. He was obviously Tulane's play-by-play for a long time, correct?
Right. And then in '75, I went to the Jacksonville Express.
Right.
And I actually roomed with Charlie Hall and Steve Foley.
Legend. Okay, youngsters, these are the two. When I was growing up, these two guys, Steve Foley, Charlie Hall, were the two biggest legends. Mark Oliveri, in my mind, too.
Exactly.
But these were guys that played maybe a little bit after you, but you might have crossed over with them a little bit.
Yeah, they were freshmen my senior year.
Right on. And Steve Foley was great. He still holds the Denver Broncos interception record, but he was a quarterback at Tulane, and Charlie Hall was just a great defensive player. But you were friends with those guys, and you all played together?
Yeah. Steve was he was an 8th round draft choice by the Denver Broncos in '75, but he was the #1 draft choice by the Jacksonville Express. So he came to Jacksonville, actually got moved from quarterback to cornerback.
Yeah.
And he had a great defensive back coach in Johnny Robinson.
Yeah. Yes.
And really, I think that year in transition in Jacksonville allowed Steve to go to a great career in the NFL with the Denver Broncos.
Now, did he play defensive back at Jacksonville?
Yes.
Okay, so he immediately went to that.
Right.
The Foley family was legendary here in New Orleans. Tell me this real quick. What is your highlight right now when you think about your entire career playing wise?
Playing wise, I would think from Tulane it would have to be a couple of games I had against North Carolina. I had a touchdown catch my junior year against Tommy Casanova, who I considered the greatest defensive back I ever played against.
I have a Sports Illustrated cover that says the best player in college football. It's my favorite Sports Illustrated I have, and I have a ton of old ones, and that's one. So you got a touchdown against Casanova,
right?
And LSU.
LSU. Tulane. That was the 1970 year that we went to the Liberty Bowl.
You guys, you were independent back then because, and nowadays Notre Dame's pretty much the main independent, but back then there was a number of them, even as recently as like 20, 30 years ago, before Miami joined the obviously Big East and the ACC. But a lot of teams were sprinkled on. South Carolina was before they joined the SEC, but back then, that meant you could play a lot of different teams. And I've noticed that on y'all's schedules back then, because I looked through them, a lot of teams like the Pitts, the North Carolinas you mentioned, the Notre Dames,
Boston College.
But you got to play kind of like Notre Dame does. They might get a Navy or somebody, but they always play a cross section of teams from all the conferences. That must have been pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. And we got to really travel to these different places. We played Notre Dame at home my sophomore year, and they shut us out 35-0. And then my senior year, we played them up there in South Bend. We actually led 7-0 going into halftime. I caught a touchdown right before halftime.
Wow.
They wound up wearing us down, beating us 21-7.
Still, that's impressive. Hey, let's get into your career broadcasting. So I want to talk a little bit about this team, but let's talk about you've been through a number of coaches. You've been through some ADs, and you've been through a lot of broadcast partners. I want to see the coaches part. Like, how many coaches do you think you can remember that you broadcasted under? Because it's been quite a few.
Yeah, it's actually been 11. Okay.
11 since you've been broadcasting, 40 years.
Yeah, when I started, Larry Smith was the head coach. Larry Smith left. It was Vince Gibson.
Yes.
Followed by Wally English.
Yes.
Followed by Mac Brown.
Yeah, right.
Followed by Greg Davis. Then when Davis left.
Well, you wrote out a list, and it's interesting because Mac Brown was also. I didn't realize he was also athletic director.
Right.
That's one thing I didn't know. Because I guess I was in college myself, I wasn't paying attention, but it's a wonderful little list you gave me, and it's got all the broadcast part. There it is. You wrote it out. I even put it out there. That's wonderful. That's your play-by-play group on the right, the guys that you worked with, and that's 9 of those, and You know, 3 of them I think most people here know well, at least 2 of them, Ty Graffinini and Andrew Allegretti, was here just for a short time. Now Corey Glore has taken over, but the coaches. Now I think this might be some memories for some people because you mentioned those first ones and you threw in Greg Davis, but then the Buddy Tevens era, obviously Tommy Bowden's great year in '98 before he left to Clemson, Chris Selfo, Bob Toledo, now you're bringing back memories, Curtis Johnson, and now Willie Fritz. And I think it goes without saying, other than that 1 year that Bowden had, Fritz might be the most successful on this list.
I think so. You know, and I think he's really done the most to change the culture of Tulane football. I was so glad to see him stay. And, you know, when you win the Bobby Dodd Award, you know, some of the criteria that they have is scholarship, integrity, and those are the things.
The Coach of the Year?
Yeah, Coach of the Year.
The one that Fritz just won, correct?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And, of course, you know, success on the athletic field, and he met all those criteria.
That Bobby Dodd Award was a big deal. We used to sponsor that award when I was in Atlanta. I mean, Bobby Dodd's a great Georgia Tech guy, right?
Exactly.
So that was a big deal to give away, and I know the criteria. So, and Fritz certainly, he fits all those. I've always said this. I love that guy. He's a great human being and a wonderful football coach, but he's just a guy that's, you know, that's great to be around as well.
Yeah, he really is. And the thing about Coach Fritz is that he treats everybody the same, everybody with respect.
Yes,
you know,
he does.
From his assistants to the equipment staff, to the radio team, to the, you know, the workers on the field, just everybody.
It's the way you should be, right?
Exactly.
And it's great to be around him, like I said, because I've noticed that from the very first time I met him, and even when like the 2-10 year into the 12-2 year, you know, it's hard to be up for a 2-10 season. I had WWL, we would have him on every Tuesday, and I was talking to him, and it was like I could tell it was hard, but he did it every week. You know, you know, it's not easy when you're on a little bit of a losing streak. It's much more fun when you're winning, but he's the same person either way.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Coach Fritz. You know, you have to be a leader. You know, whether it's the good years or the bad years. And that year was pretty bad. Of course, Tulane had to evacuate to Birmingham because of Hurricane Ida.
Right.
Everybody, you know, keeping everybody together in this big hotel. The facilities were, it was really terrible.
Yeah, I want to actually ask you, that's a good one, because I haven't really got it from an announcer, you know, like I'm talking about, because y'all tell it like it is. The players, the coaches, they're going to just try to keep it tight, but it had to be. I mean, they've all said it was hard, but you just said something I didn't realize, that the facilities were terrible. I mean, I always tell people, listen, they went to Oklahoma. That was a big game. They were supposed to be home. They've been looking forward to it for months and months, if not a couple of years. And then they have to go play on the road after being displaced to Birmingham. I mean, that couldn't have been easy. And you still almost beat Oklahoma, who was #2 in the nation.
Yeah, that was a great game. But getting back to the facilities, you know, no locker rooms.
Yes.
No training room. Everything was spread out in these big, you know, when you go to a hotel, you got the big conference room,
Sure.
or you're going to walk in a conference room, all the equipment's on the floor. You know, there's no place to hang your clothes, your equipment, you know, stuff like that. The training room was makeshift. So Coach Fritz and his staff did a tremendous job, okay, for that time they were in Birmingham.
No question. So when you went from that year to the success of this season, and you know, it's everywhere. It's everybody. Like, I've traveled with teams professionally that were doing very well and then doing very poorly. And the Hawks is the best thing. Braves were always winning when I was there. That was easy. That was fun. But the Hawks were winning in the 90s, and all of a sudden they let a bunch of people go to try to get that next level, and it failed miserably. And we were winning 14 games out of 82. It's hard, but it's so much fun when you're winning. So tell me the difference this year as opposed to, you know, traveling around doing the games last year.
Well, of course, you know, we're back home, and I think the thing that really led this team to the success they had was that it was, you know, player-driven. The captains, the 4 captains were outstanding. Nick Anderson,
Yeah.
Dorian Williams, Michael Pratt, and Sincere Haynesworth.
Yeah.
Those guys were fabulous. And, you know, when you looked at the schedule preseason, you know, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm thinking, you know, I look at the first 4 games and I'm thinking, hey, we got a good shot to be 3-1 after 4.
Right.
And I'm thinking that
Kansas State would be the loss, right?
Right. Thinking Kansas State's going to be the one.
Right.
And then, of course, we pull off a great victory up there at Kansas State, come home, dropped to Mississippi State, which was kind of a blessing in disguise because from that game, the mantra of 1-0.
Oh, Southern Miss game. Okay.
Yeah, Southern Miss,
right.
Southern Miss game. The mantra of 1-0 was developed.
Right.
You know, and that was the mantra for the rest of the year.
Yeah, you know what? Because that was one that worried me because obviously huge one. They ended up being Big 12 champions, Kansas State did. And it's always a letdown. But the thing is, sometimes that letdown goes into a loss and it continues to lose. And that's what impressed me about the Wave this year. That loss volleyed them into like 5 more wins in a row. I was like, wow, they came back from that one loss and they picked it back up. That doesn't always happen.
No, it really doesn't. You know, we go on the road the next week against Houston, and Michael Pratt's injured. He doesn't start.
Yes.
Justin Ibieta starts the game. On the first drive, he takes a sweep around in, and instead of going out of bounds, he kind of took on a cornerback and tore his labrum. So we lose him on the first drive, and Kai Horton comes in. He's got to play the rest of the game.
The third string guy, and wins it on a Friday night.
Exactly.
I talk about this game a lot because I was on the road doing my games, and I remember, you know, everybody's going out to dinner. It's Friday night. We have our game Saturday, and I'm watching this game, and I stayed home, watched it, and I was so excited that I did because the whole country could see that, and that was to me the big one, the turnaround, because I had Houston in the first game of the year at Texas Tech. We did that game. Houston was a top 20 team with Clayton Tune at quarterback. They had weapons, man. That wide receiver is something else. But when Tulane beat them, that's when my eyes were really open. You can always get one surprise win, but when you had that one on the two, you know, I believe they're both on the road, right?
Yes.
Kansas State and Houston. I was like, this team is for real. And that's when I truly started believing that they could do some really special things and not just be, hey, a little bit over 500.
Yeah, well, I think the Kansas State win was big, but I think the Houston win was really big also.
Right.
And then we go on to have some, beat some teams. You know, we hadn't beat SMU in 7 years.
Right.
Okay.
So many close ones, too.
Right. We beat them, and then, of course, we end Cincinnati's 5-year, 32-game home winning streak.
That's crazy. I mean, people don't realize how many just huge wins this team had. Lots of road wins, and obviously the big one at home. And I want to talk about that one real quick because I know I'm running out of time. But the UCF win after losing, that was the second loss, right? 38-31 earlier. And they come back and they get to play them again. You know, Navy ended up, helping them out a little bit with that win. So they've gotten that championship game and they got it at home. What was the exhilaration, the feeling of getting a conference championship? Because as far as I remember, Tulane wasn't in a conference when they won in '98, correct?
Yeah, we were in Conference USA.
USA, that's the one. Okay, but what was this one like?
It was unbelievable.
There wasn't a championship game back then, though. In '98, right?
No, there really wasn't. It was just based on record.
Right.
And of course the turnaround the year before '97, Tulane was 7-4 under and then they go 12-0. So this turnaround, but the atmosphere was just electric, at Yeoman Stadium, and everybody was just excited. It was one of the hardest tickets in town to get, and when the fans rushed the field after, it was reminiscent of, I hadn't seen that since 1973 when Tulane beat LSU for the first time.
I was there. I was on my brother's shoulders, literally on the chain link fence, and I got Mark Oliveri's chin strap, which back then was just a little piece of gray. I mean, it was almost like this little gray thing that could protect nothing. Right. You probably had one similar. But hey, we give gifts on this show, and I'm so happy to have you here. I've got this one here. Let me go. This one is a little bit better for you. Yeah, there we go. That's the one. Steve Barrios, that's from Shays de la Shays.
Well,
right by campus.
Yes, sir.
That's it, right there on Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway by the Starbucks. Okay. And here, this is task performance by another Tulane legend,
yes.
Al Andrews. So you're going to be on this this helmet. It's overdue, and I can't wait. We're going to do you in green. Give me somewhere I can read you, right? Like in there or there. Hey, right there's good.
Okay.
And Steve Barrios, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much, and good luck with everything. Obviously, the Wave had that great year, and I'm going to talk to Sincere Haynes, but I want to talk to you about that USC matchup, but I'm running out of time here, so I'll get Sincere Haynes on that one, but I appreciate you so much, buddy.
All right.
And there's you with your wonderful wife when you were being honored.
Yeah, 40 years. I tell you what,
40 years for both. What's the wife? How many years with the wife?
48.
48 with the wife, 40 with the Wave. That's a combined of 88. Good work, my friend, and you well deserved on that. Thank you, Steve, on when you were honored there for 40 years of broadcast excellence. I really do appreciate you.
Thank you, Scott.
You're one
pleasure.
of the true gentlemen in this business, man.
Thank you.
You really are, and congratulations and success to all the Wave. Speaking of the Green Wave, I couldn't let this show go by because We didn't have a show last Tuesday because of the holidays right after the Tulane Green Wave's great win over USC. One of the most thrilling games you'll ever see in your life. And I still get chills when I think about it. But we're going to have one of the stars of that game. Not one of the guys you see in the box score. One of the guys that makes those players that get in the box score do what they do. And his name is Sincere Haynesworth. And he, right now, he's first team all-conference center. This guy could be an NFL player tomorrow. That's how good he is. But he's staying to play with the Wave one more year with his quarterback, Michael Pratt. He's coming right up here on Primetime Sports. Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. You know, what a year for the Tulane Green Wave. We just had, of course, the great Steve Barrios, who's been announcing games for 40 years, but I had to get another player. You know that. I had to get another player. We started back in the summer with Michael Pratt. He came in with Willie Fritz, the coach. And then we had Nick Anderson, you know, the great linebacker after the big Kansas State game where he was such a force. We even brought the punter and wide receiver. And I said, we got to continue. We had Ty J. Spears, who was the MVP, obviously, of the entire conference, the player of the year, the offensive player of the year of the American Athletic Conference. And he had such a bang-up game. But the guys that paved the way for guys to look good, like that wide receiver I mentioned, Shea Wyatt, like that quarterback, Michael Pratt, like Ty J. Spears, well, we got one of the best. He's all-conference. He is first-team all-conference center. His name, one of the greatest in the game, Sincere Haynesworth, and he has started since his middle of his freshman year. Do you know how hard that is to do for an offensive lineman? He's been doing it for a long time, and guess what? Because of the rules with COVID, you can stay an extra year if you so choose to. He and his quarterback, Michael Pratt, they made the Tulane Green Wave faithful so happy when they announced before the big game against USC that they were indeed going to stay for another year and play for the Green Wave and try to duplicate this great season, just kind of like what happened with Georgia, duplicating it the following year as well. Tulane hopes to do the same thing. And here he is right here, all the way from Pearland, Texas, a little bit southwest of Houston. Sincere, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much.
I have never had this many players from one school on, but if there's one team since I've been doing this show for 7 years, and that includes the 2019 LSU National Championship team, it's y'all. I mean, congratulations on such a wonderful season.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, tell me this, man. Yeah, you came from Texas. I'm sure you had options. I mean, you're going to be an NFL player one day. What made you come to Tulane in New Orleans?
It was mainly academics and, you know, the opportunity to play good football and to, you know, get to this position that we're in now and to have been able to, you know, work our way up to here is exactly what I
Could you envision this, though? Could you have envisioned I mean, this has been the most thrilling month plus, you know. I mean, you won the championship game. And think about it, to get to it, all the great wins. I talked to Steve about the road wins at Kansas State, Houston, Cincinnati. You break their record. And then the thrill of those last two games, could you have envisioned the UCF championship and everybody on each other's shoulders and celebrating, and then the magnitude of this game against USC and National Power? Talk to me about all that.
You know, so I've mentioned it a lot, but before the season, as far as the American Championship game, we had, as soon as we got back, it was around this time, we get back in, I think, about a week or so. We sat down as captains first, and we had a little captains meeting, me, Pratt, Nick, and Dorian. Yeah. We sat down and we talked about our goals for the season and our personal goals as well. And one thing that was a constant was like, we got to win. Right. You know, we got to win for, you know, we felt like we all deserved to be having these conference honors and, you know, these things last year. It was like, well, what's missing? You know, we've played well. It's just winning. You know, it's just, we've got to win in order to, you know, for the team to have the success it deserves. Yeah, right. And, you know, we sat down, we decided we need to have a team meeting, player-led team meeting, you know, no coaches, staff, anything, just players, you know. That's so cool, all right. The players that play and everyone else, you know, everyone who helps us, scout team players, all that, and just talk about these goals and, like, kind of manifest these things. You know, we're going to host the championship game in New Orleans. We're going to win it. You
manifested that. That's amazing. Well, Michael said the same thing, not as clearly as you just did, but he said, hey, we feel we're going to go to the championship game. And, you know, when you're talking to someone and you see it in their eyes, he really believed it. I'm like, You're making me believe, because it's hard to believe after a 2-10 season, right? But I want to talk about that, because how did that adversity of what you had to go through with Ida and being away from home, and people don't even know the beginning of how hard that was. They really don't. And Steve kind of mentioned that, no training room, all that stuff's so important, no real locker room. I mean, the adversity of that and those tough losses that you had to think about for a full year before this season, how did that play into the great success this season?
I think it really made each and every one of the players just look inside, for some perspective, how much, after going through a season like that and being displaced for so long, it starts to make you how much you really love the game. You don't do these things if you don't love the game. You don't do it out of necessity. As a human being, comfort is what we desire.
Yes,
and
it is.
That was completely out of comfort. And, it makes you look inside and really realize how much you give to the game and how much you love the game, and it makes you have a different type of respect for it. And I think it really brought that out of us.
I'm listening to your, you talk about the captains, and all four of you are such strong personalities and such strong leaders. You really are. I mean, and you're all conference players. That's unbelievable when you think about it. You're a first teamer. Michael's a second teamer. Nick's a second teamer. And Dorian's a first teamer. These are 4 all-conference players. You don't get that before the season. You earned that. And by the way, 11 of your, if we're going to talk 22, I'm not even talking about the punter getting second team, but the 22 guys that are first or second team, that's 44, right? Tulane had 11 of them. 11.
Right.
6 on offense, 5 on D. 6 first teamers, 5 second teamers, but it was spread out evenly among the offense and defense. I mean, what do you think when you think about that? Before you came to Tulane, could you really honestly have envisioned that kind of domination?
I do. I know one thing that my mom always says is we don't have to do things, and it's, she talked to me about, you're going to go to Tulane and you're going to give it all the effort you got, like you deserve to be at, the top schools of that time, the Bamas, the Clemsons, and, the Ohio States, and you turn that program into that, and you just do what you do, and it's just the mentality that I would like to bring and that I try to show every day, is that and those schools don't matter. We can be better than those schools. It's all about mentality and effort, and I think Coach Fritz has allowed us to build that culture, is that we don't expect anything less out of ourselves than championships and great opportunities.
I remember when Willie first got here, I've had him on every year, and I talked to him a lot on the side too. But I remember the one thing he said is we have a lot of talent here, and we've had a lot. You see these NFL players from the skill positions a lot of times, and now you're seeing the bigger guys. But that's the one thing when he first got here, that they didn't have the muscle to hang with the really better schools. And then now you saw it on display. USC gets the best of the best. They get who they want from the state of California, and that's a national program that gets to it. And you were toe-to-toe with them the entire game, and it's because of the trenches. That's a fact, because teams like that, or Georgia, they'll wear you down at the end, but y'all got stronger and stronger. Have you seen a difference of the size and the physicality of the offensive defensive linemen with the Green Wave since the time you started? And tell me more about it.
Absolutely, and that's all credit to Coach Kurt Hester.
Dude, he gets mentioned. That's another guy I've had on the show. He gets mentioned by everybody. That's amazing.
He's awesome.
Right.
He really brings that energy and mindset that I was talking about. Every day, he shows it every day. It's something you never have to question with Coach Hester. His energy and his work ethic that he's going to bring to the table, and that's a lot of credit to that guy. And I personally can speak that I feel tremendously different. He's brought in a lot of, position-specific training and things that would help us last all game. Sled pushes and things like that. Just instead of, receiver conditioning and things like that, we're pushing sleds for 4 quarters. And it's
wow.
So you're starting to think okay, we're training for a game. We're not training just to train. We're training to go do what we do, and that's play football and play 4 hard quarters of football and more if we need to.
Can we talk about Dallas? Because I didn't really get into it much with Steve. We kind of ran out of time, because I was talking about his career first, and then we talked some about the season. But I want to talk about Dallas specifically, because you go up there. This is the Cotton Bowl, man. When I grew up, it was 4 bowls. The Fiesta kind of grew up over the years, but Cotton Bowl is a big deal to me. And I remember if you got in that game, that was something else. But you got there. And you're playing basically a New Year's Day bowl. They played it because the NFL had games on the first. They played the second. But the thing is the magnitude of playing against the Heisman Trophy winner, and I know you're on offense, he's on offense, you're not against each other, but And I don't know if you know the history of this program, like old guys like me, or O.J. Simpson in the 60s and the 70s and stuff, but going into it, what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts about getting overwhelmed or just the whole moment? Because Tulane's been in bowls, but nothing like this.
Right. Yeah, no, I just really felt like we deserved to be there. And it was everything we worked for, everything we've, spent countless hours of film and training and all the grueling experiences. It was what we went to Birmingham for last year. We didn't know at the time, but
you didn't, right?
It's all leading up to something big, and you just got to have faith in that. And it was amazing to just get that opportunity and to take full advantage of it.
This the way you're talking with this confidence and exuberance is. That's why I didn't move away from the TV when it was 45-30. I felt it. I kept telling people before the game, I don't just say this because I like Tulane. I think they're going to win the game. I truly did. And even when you were down and it looked a little bit bleak at one point, I'm like, this is not over. They're going to get 2 more possessions. They can hold them. They're going to do this. And y'all did it in such dramatic fashion. No one could have even dreamed about how this happened. I mean, there were so many little plays that had to happen. And of course it came down to a review at the end, right? When the guy said he dropped it, I kept watching. He didn't drop it. And they got the touchdown. I got chills right now. I swear to goodness, I got chills. And I was like thinking, man, when you scored, went 8 down, I'm like, okay, they got to hold him. And then the guy gets the kickoff and goes a little bit out of bounds on the 1. I said, got this. There's the touchdown right there by the tight end. But the fact is, when that kickoff, I want your opinion and what you thought. Y'all had just scored on offense. The kickoff goes, the defense has got to hold them 3 and out and get the ball back and hopefully score, do your thing. And so they got the. Did you get the 2-pointer before? Whatever it was.
Oh, we scored.
Oh, the safety. That's the thing.
Right after that.
So they get the ball on the 1, and the safety is the biggest play of the game. And then it was Jenkins that went through the line, whoever it was. I just went, I was watching it with some people, and we just jumped up to the review and said, can you believe that? And that's when I said, this game's over. What were your thoughts at the punt, the kickoff, when it went out of bounds, and then the safety?
Safety. So just. Man, I wish everyone could have been like mic'd up for that game.
Right.
It's unbelievable. Like the more I talk about it, just the talks going off from the defense, just like, hey, defense telling us just like, get us one, we got y'all, and then where offense is looking at each other, just 2 quick ones, like just keep playing.
Do y'all really talk like that?
Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
Keep playing, just pumping each other's tires, and as soon as defense got that safety, I knew it was what we had to do. It was showtime. It's business, As soon as they put us in that position, it's like
it's remarkable, isn't it?
Coming on to us.
Like we all felt this, even fans, and y'all felt the same thing. Like I was like, they're gonna do this. They're gonna really do this. And I mean, once again, I got chills. I can't even believe this. I really do, because I remember the moment. And I'm watching with Dickie Brennan, the restaurant guy, and he's like, is Tulane going to win this game? I'm like, I don't know for sure, but yes. And you did it. And then the celebration after, I mean, the release. Talk about that real quick.
It's like you just feel the weight of the world just lifted off your shoulders. You go to sleep at night thinking about every game, about going 1-0, about, just especially for this game, you can't even sleep at night. You're just thinking about all the possibilities, everything you can do, everything that can come next, and it's an amazing feeling.
Well, it's so well deserved. I'm so glad you're back for another year, because I love this interview, and I wish I had more time, because I'd like to get you right before the season starts next year.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind. I hope Coach Fritz will let that happen. But it's been a pleasure. I mean, your team has been wonderful. You got wonderful, not just players, but human beings on this team, and I say it all the time. I mean, Tulane has got a quality of athlete right now. Coach Fritz and Troy Dan and everybody involved with the program, Kurt Hester, all your coaches have done such a fabulous job, and you're a great example of that, Sincere. But
thank you so much.
We give gifts, man, and this is a task performance shirt made by Tulane graduate.
All right.
These are so soft, man. These are really good.
I actually really like that.
And then this is right on campus. Go get you something real quick over there on Chase Delachase, right by the Starbucks on Maple.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I've heard of Chase Delachase.
Pop in there, and then you're going to be on this helmet. They got legends in this helmet, man. Barrios just signed it. He's one of them. But you got guys from the 70s, 80s, 90s that did great things at Tulane. Coaches, players. We've had a bunch of them on. So if you can find yourself a spot, I don't know, maybe something. You got a long name, so make it legible, though. I want to see it.
I got you.
You got one of the great names for sure. Sincere Haynesworth. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
And there he is signing that ball right there. And congratulations to the entire Greenway family. I mean, for real. And that goes with my man Jason, who's been helping me bring athletes all season long. It's been wonderful. I want to thank him. I want to thank Willie for allowing these players to come. I didn't know it were going to be a 12-2 season. I didn't know it would be magical. I was just hoping so. And it was, and then some. So congratulations to all of them. I want to thank everybody at WLE. I want to thank Tim Brando for coming on from Shreveport earlier to talk about college football in general. And, of course, Steve Barrios and Sincere Haynesworth. Congratulations to everybody in the Greenway family. We'll see you next week. I got a big show next week, by the way. Tim Floyd, the great coach of the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, he did great things in college. He and John Brady are going to come back together, one of the most fun segments ever. And then I talked to Coach Fritz. He said he might be able to come on next week and maybe bring a player or two. We'll see what's up right here on Primetime Sports.